When most people think of silk weaving, they think of Spitalfields in the 17th century. However, in the early 19th century, many workers and masters were forced away from London due to the heavy taxation of the Spitalfields Act. And this led them to move to Sudbury on the Essex and Suffolk border.
We are well known for our historic restoration work, the likes of the National Trust and English Heritage, historic royal palaces, those sorts of people who really have pieces of furniture and houses of international significance. And we want to put back the splendour of those buildings.
We get very involved with our customers. Someone has invited me into their home and I'm advising on fabric that they're going to be living with, and it's actually quite an emotive process.
You're looking at a piece of fabric that was made 200 years ago and you think, how was that created? How did that person do it? And you work out that part, but then you've also got to work out how we can apply that to the types of yarn and the structures and set of loom that we have today.
You consider all sorts of elements, what industrial techniques were around at different periods, what types of colour were around, were they synthetic or were they natural dyes. All these elements feed into making sure that you have a really accurate piece of fabric.
When you're hand drawing, you're able to walk around the document, whereas when you're on a computer, you're following that line in a different way, which is why that first step is so important. But the beauty of CAD is we are able to change the scale of a design with ease.
It allows us to program very complex weave structures. Before we used to cut and lace cards, and it was quite a physical process. Now the skill is in the understanding of the software and the technology and how we can get that to translate a design into the Jacquard technology.
We would take the small wrapping of yarn that's been dyed into different environments. We would bring it into a window so that it was replicating how somebody would have it in their home. As much as you can read a colour into a spectrometer, we think the human eye is really key in that process. When you don't work with textiles all the time, it is difficult for that person to really visualise what it's going to look like. It's really the first tangible part of the process when you marry the warp and the weft together.
We're really lucky to have experienced weavers. They have a real sense about how a warp behaves, perhaps a little area where the tension is not quite as even as somewhere else. They'll constantly be watching and feeling. Weaving is in the preparation. If you don't get those 20 steps in place before you start, you don't have a cloth, you don't have a product. The actual weaving is the short part.
When you look back at the projects we've done over the last 40-some years, it's quite humbling, I suppose, because we've been part of that history.
The very foundations of weaving remain the same, it's just the execution. Really hope to continue that passion for making beautiful fabric, which is the same passion that people had 200 years ago.